So that just little just yes, perfect. So that I a little bit know the crowd here. Who of you are a mobile developer? Okay, not that many as I was expecting to for a Flutter talk, but it's awesome. Okay, good. What is Flutter? I don't know if how many of you already heard from Flutter. Flutter, it's the new mobile SDK from Google, which allows you to develop apps in record time. And why is that important? And why we need another framework? That's because the last 10 years, the challenge and expectation on mobile development has changed a lot. The people are kind of assuming this because it's an app, it has not to cost that much, but has to be a high quality app, like with great UX. And you as a developer has to be fast because you get a lot of compared to the web development because it's just an app. And it has to be mostly both run on both platforms. So it's kind of, the iOS stuff has to look a little bit like the Android stuff or other ways around the world. So, to achieve that, people kind of realized, okay, it's kind of expensive to write apps twice. And especially if you have an opinionated UI for your company, let's say I work at SBB, we have a pretty opinionated UI with our red stuff and we have our bots and stuff like that, and even with our, I think with touch Fahrplan, as you know, and there are already solutions for that, and there are this more popular. How many of you have tried one of those at least? How many have tried all? How many of you was satisfied with that? That was so medium. So let's make a little bit classify these frameworks. We have got this React Native, NativeScript, Cordova, and Ionic, which all use JavaScript and TypeScript based. Then we have got Xamarin, React Native, and NativeScript, which use the native widgets because after a few years doing Cordova, Ionic, people kind of realized the performance are not that great with this web view stuff. Let's try the native widgets. And as already mentioned, we got the web view stuff, which it's especially easy to develop. But if we look back to what we kind of want to achieve, we want to have high quality apps. It's going to be hard to do that. And fast development, that's kind of, we achieved that with that. Amazing UIs. I know I always got this chuddery and not very funny UI with all these cross-platform frameworks. And what you have, it's the portability. So, what with cross-platform we actually got, if you talk to a customer, what you have to decide is what is more important for him. It's more important to have kind of a quality app with amazing UI. Okay, then probably you have to go say, well, let's go the native approach. Then it's going to be expensive, and probably it's going to be a hard time to have his corporate identity across platforms. Otherwise, if you want to say, okay, the customer doesn't have that much money, or they won't have the fast development stuff, that's okay. Let's do it in cross-platform. Then you got probably very fast in your apps, but at the end, it's going to probably have some bad performance at the UI, and this look and feel, it depends which framework you're going to be using. It's not going to be that native, or in fact, no native experience. So, but the business wants that. And there is, if we go back to look at how our framework landscape looks, it's where Flutter jumps in. And that's why we need another framework, because all these solutions that we have tried yet, that doesn't work out. So with Flutter, you get kind of both best worlds. So to show you that, make a little live demo. So brave to the demo gods, maybe everything goes right. If you start an app or a Flutter project, you will end with with that stuff. For all the iOS developer, I'm sorry that I use an Android emulator. I do since 10 years Android, so it's my environment. And you got, on the right side, you got your IntelliJ, which you can use if people want to, you can even use Android Studio or VS Code if you like. So that's kind of how you start. And I told you, you get kind of both. So that's the first thing. It kind of blew me away when I first saw Flutter. It's the development cycle. That you maybe know as an Android developer, which you average build time. So if you want to change a button, the color, and you push the button to please deploy on device, it takes you about 30 seconds up to 1 minute. I worked on another big peer-to-peer finance app, which there's not anymore here in Switzerland, which takes me 15 minutes for a cold start, just to deploy something. So then let's start with that. As you know, I work at SBB, so I like blue, but I kind of prefer more the red. I'm a little biased on that. So, bam, refresh, no refreshing, we hold it. So that's okay, that's fine. And as you see, that's just a counter, which is pretty amazing. With that counter, you see now the app has a state. So it does only has a hot reload, or I can't just be, it has state hot reload. That means the app keeps a state. So because one of my best friends is iOS developer, and he always struggles with the fat button because he says always, I don't think this fat button, guys. I don't know what you get, guys, with that. So it's pretty easy. We do kind of remove the fat button, and because I don't want to do it for my friend, which he can't pay here right now, I'm gonna add not a material button, but I'm gonna add a Cupertino button. For those, Cupertino buttons are called the buttons from iOS, and with a text, probably with add. So as you see, you got now an ad. It looks a little bit not very nice because we didn't have any colors, and so we add even a Cupertino color. We have an active blue. So it doesn't look very blue. That's the thing why it doesn't look blue, because we didn't add yet an on press. That's usually on click. The Flutter team have provided you a rich widget set already built for you for Android. That's the material design apps and the Cupertino stuff, and which is kind of this iOS-likely UI. So we're going to add the increase. Here we go, and it's back. It's still working, which is pretty cool. So, but you know, if you increase something, it's probably mostly you want to decrease it. So that's what I mean is you only can change during your development cycle the look and feel of it. Now you can even change the behavior. And why is that important? Let's imagine you have an app which you have to log in somewhere, or let's say a banking app, which is the logging process. It's really complicated, and you wanna change something at the 10th of screen of it. So the cool thing is you can navigate once to it, and the app keeps you logged in, and you can kind of change the behavior on that screen or whatever, but you still keep logged in. And we add just here another Cupertino button with a child. Now, maybe because add it's fine, but maybe we can even add an icon it. Maybe a minus? No? Not add it here. I just change my mind and add here, and we hit add text. So here we go. So, and it looks pretty, you see, that's pretty cool to change UI like that. And if you just think that for each of these things, I had to wait 2 minutes. Okay, you had to wait at least nearly 1 minute on typing my stuff. But the cool thing is, it still works. And that's what blew me away if you are a mobile developer, which you kind of get this web feeling, which you was always challenged. As I was always challenged as web guys. I was developing and the guys was sitting with the UX team behind. Oh, let's move that button. They do, okay, just move it. And now I can do that. And if you are an Android developer or a Java developer, you even get all the power of IntelliJ for you. So because as an IntelliJ developer, I always say I develop Alt-Enter. And because if you have a problem in IntelliJ will say you the solution with Alt-Enter. And so, for example, I want to add, because they're a little bit clumsy, minus and plus, I want to add padding to it. I can just Alt-Enter, and you see IntelliJ gives me some suggestion, and I want to add my padding. Just save, and then you got the add padding. And even you got the nice things like, now you've got the color, the icon. I want to have that even in white, and we can do it like that. And if you're a native developer, it's too magic, because for that it would nearly take, even after 10 years, it would at least take 30 minutes to do it. So jump back to that's what's the limit. Jump back to the slides. So now the big question posed to the engineers: how does Flutter do that? Well, Flutter goes a total different approach right now, and it has. This is the architecture of the SDK. This is the whole SDK, and if you ship an app, the whole thing gets shipped with the app. And the cool thing is, if you start developing Flutter, you have got all the SDK on your machine. So you can go down as far as you want. That's all Dart. And that's C++. And you can go all down. And the Cupertino widget, as you saw before, and the flat button, they live in these two packages, in Material Design and Cupertino. At our company, which we're running right now an experiment, which we kind of replace those two with our own widgets, and it's pretty easy. Give it for example, with UI test pixel, which I test pixels, which it looks perfect. We've got a half day, which we get nearly the basic of our widgets, about 15 widgets done. Just for the button end with testing stuff like that, I got nearly 1 day to do it for a corporate identity, just to get a kind of, with Flutter I've got in a half day 5 widgets, with 1 day with Android native development 1 day. And the cool thing is, even here, because you've got all the SDK, let's say you have developed your app with Flutter release, with preview right now too, and you ship it today. The whole SDK gets shipped with your app. That means your app is going to run. It doesn't matter if the platform going to update. Your app's going to still running on that because you've got your SDK in your app. That even means you got the same SDK on iOS and on Android. Now, don't worry about how big it is. Since the new release, Flutter's overhead, it's 2 megabytes. So the whole SDK gets compiled down, and stuff. If you do release stuff, and it's going to be just only 2 megabytes. So that's one picture. I mean, in fact, if you take with your Pixel 2 right now, a picture, it's about 4 megabytes. So just adding a picture to your app, it's more than adding Flutter to your app. And as you see before, everything is a widget, as you see in the demo. And why is everything a widget? Because then you have got kind of this power of combining things. You saw that with a child, I just add, I changed my mind. I don't want to have a text as a child. I want to have an icon. Because at the end, an icon is a widget. Text is a widget. Even padding is a widget. Everything is a widget. Even your app is a widget. So in fact, you can even do kind of an app in an app if you want. I don't recommend it, but you can do. And you can write your own widgets, of course. The hot reload stuff, that's to be honest, that's the thing that keeps loving me and Flutter. It's the hot reload. Usually, if you do React Native development, for example, you are as fast with Flutter, with the hot reload stuff. And why it's that? That's because if you JavaScript or stuff like that, they don't have to compile the stuff. You can just ship the code and running on the V8 or and stuff. Flutter gets compiled, but only on release build. So if you do development, you deploy with your app a Dart VM, which when you save, only the delta from your stuff gets deployed to the device. So it doesn't matter how big your code is. You have always about a deployment about 400 milliseconds. The maximum I've ever got was 600 milliseconds. It's always under a second. So if you compare under a second to 2 minutes, you can calculate by yourself how much time you save during the week. So as already mentioned, you have IntelliJ. It works for both Ultimate and Community Edition. Then you've got Android Studio and VS Code. I personally prefer the IntelliJ and Android Studio Code because, as I mentioned before, I know the key shorts by heart. But it's nice to have VS Code there because if you just want to change something in one file, you don't have to spin up the whole IDE. And yeah. So, what you should know when you're starting writing Flutter. First of all, as I mentioned, it adds 2 megabytes to your app overhead. And you still need a Mac if you want to do iOS development. And why it's that? Under the hood, Flutter generates you a normal Android or a normal iOS project. And what you have saw there, that's just a big view which they take control of it. So that's kind of for the Android and iOS developer for you under us, that's just a view controller or a big activity just in full screen, which Flutter has control of it, and they paint each pixel on that. So if you want to make iOS development, you still need all the developer tools for iOS development, and you want to make Android development, you need still all the tools. At the end, you end up to have anyway both on your machine. You and your team going to write Dart. That's not very tragic because Dart is one of the most easiest language I've ever had. I've already done several workshops with Flutter, and I never mentioned Dart. I never explained Dart yet. I said, just start writing. And people, I don't know. Just start writing. If you have already written in Java or TypeScript, C# or whatever, you're just going to feel at home. They have some quirks which is own to Dart, but you kind of look up on the way you go. The other thing is, right now, there is a possibility to do background services. What I mean with background service are tasks which runs, heavy tasks which runs when your app are not in the front on your device. So, for example, you have a big, giant image you want to upload, but you want, let's say, WhatsApp. You write your message, send it, and quit your WhatsApp. On Android, it's right now possible to send that message, even if the app is not in the foreground. That's not possible right now with an easy way with Flutter. But you can do stuff out of the thread. So if you just want, if your app it's on the foreground, you can still crunch your, let's say, your image, stuff like that. You can do it off the UI thread. That's no problem. Just the background stuff, that's not yet easy. One important thing, because people, especially mobile developers, Android and iOS developer, kind of was afraid from React and Xamarin and stuff like, oh my God, I lose my job because that's now so easy to do it, everyone can do it. No, Flutter doesn't replace Android or iOS developer. I would even say they enhance iOS and Android developer to work together on the same source code, enhance your teams. You get to know better each other. And because why it's that? Because if you have to do something, let's say in the background, or you have to do something with the GPS, you still have to go back to the native code and do it with the framework. So what do we do Flutter right now? In my opinion, the best thing to use Flutter is if you have your idea with a pretty opinionated UI, or if you have a customer with a pretty opinionated UI, I want to say, hey, I have my CI, I want to have it on both platforms. I would strongly recommend Flutter because I was never so fast as with Flutter. Per time doing this, it's great. I do all my side projects right now with Flutter. And to be honest, since nearly 1.5 years with Flutter, it's just fun. And it is not yet in the release, but you can check it out by the master. You can even, let's say, the brownfield approach. You got your app, and you have a new feature, and you want to have them on both platforms. For example, a chat module with add to app feature. You can do that. You can create just a module or a framework for your app and do then that in Flutter. So that was it from my side. I hope you liked the introduction. So I'm going to thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrice. Questions?
So how is working with Flutter and one state management library like Redux or Mobix or something like that?
There is a Redux implementation already on for Dart. You can do it. Absolutely, you have even already the Redux development stuff, with time traveling stuff, all that. It's already there. That's one way to go. The community, it's not yet kind of clear. It feels like the stage 10 years ago in Android, which is the right pattern or the right architecture pattern for apps. Because Google, for example, recommends block, but they don't provide good example yet. But the other one is for the community driven. It's Redux, which is you can do that.
Great talk. I really liked it, and very nice slides. Do you know yesterday we heard about instant apps and content bundles. Do you know if Flutter integrates with that already?
To be honest, no, because until yesterday, I was still thinking that you have got the limitation of 5 megabytes on the instant app. And just a few weeks ago, Flutter reduced the overhead of 2 megabytes. So it was kind of inclusive, so I couldn't get my hands on it to try it out. So I don't know yet. But it's something I'm going to try out.
Hey, Patrice. I have a question. So if I want to integrate Flutter with, let's say I have a kind of a library that I have to use, which is, kind of does fancy things, and I should use it because otherwise I will not. How easy is it to integrate it with this library? For example, it's a jar package that I would normally use in a native app, which is straightforward. How easy is it in Flutter?
It's funny because we have just done that with our SDK from SwissPass with Flutter. And
exactly.
Yes, we have already done that in our experiment, and it is you have to kind of just map the calls. It's channel called, and what you do, you kind of just call the native API, and you wrap it with a Dart safe, and the SDK takes a kind of care of the communication between that. It is kind of a dumb work because you have to map it all by your hand right now, and you have to be careful if you have the two platforms, let's say iOS and Android. You have to look, because if you have defined your interface on the Dart side, you have to match them both. That's going to work. But that's if you have a good library which anyway works with both. It should already have similar SDK API.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And just if the Firebase team does that, you can look there, because they just do it. The whole Firebase SDK, it's with to Flutter. Also, you can look there. They've done that.
Are we good? You do know the other subject is Flutter too, so I'm just saying it's a Flutter moment.
Okay, no more questions?
We do.
Ah, excuse me.
Yeah, I could have taken that one there. So thanks for the talk, Patrice, on very short notice. So basically, we see that you know your topic. One question: you mentioned you pointed out several times that it's good for having it for Android and iOS development at the same time. But what's your recommendation? Because a lot of people only develop for one platform, maybe, and something I hear a lot about frameworks that allow for cross-device is no, not another cross-device abstraction. So what's your recommendation for someone who's just developing on one platform?
It depends on which platform, to be honest.
On Android.
On Android, I would go with Flutter. Why? Because if you ask the material design team, the best implementation from them design, it's written in Flutter.
Got Reggie running around.
But there's no people. By the way, let's do a microphone check right here, close to the mouth. Okay, just for everyone.
So now, just to extend a little bit the question, with your experience, if you have to build a multi-platform app, so web, PlayStation, Android, iOS, IPTV, so almost everything in the market, which language will you choose, or how will you do that?
Oh, that's a tough question. To be honest, I don't know what's gonna do on PlayStation. I have no idea how you develop that. But if you want to work, it depends even on your app, because that seems pretty for me like for a web job. Sorry, streaming. That's because why two? Because now streaming takes the whole screen, yeah, and that's the thing which kind of you're gonna fight with the Flutter framework. But that's the same thing. It takes the whole screen. So I couldn't recommend you yet Flutter. To be honest, I can't right now say anything. How would you do that the best way?
You showed us how you can easily add a Cupertino button to an Android project. But what if you wanted to keep the two things separate, so that you have a Cupertino button on the iOS version and an Android button or the Flutter button on the...
Then you have a class which you can ask on which platform you're running. And then you can say, okay, if I'm on Android, because I'm on an Android, then you please return me a material button. Or if I'm iOS, you return me a Cupertino button. There is already a community project which kind of abstracts it that way, but that's the way to go if you want to have both of that. But then you're gonna struggle, because if you make your scaffold of your app, because app it's two in widget, there are two different scaffolds, one for the material app and one for the Cupertino app. And if you want to do that, I would go one layer up, because there is a widget app scaffold, which the other two apps got inherited from that. So I want to start with that you you have got your freedom. But then you have to do a lot of stuff by your own. More like, yeah.
Wow. It is about Flutter, right? Your presentation.
Yes.
Okay. No, yours. No, pretty much. Okay, because I'm kind of scared because they ask all the Flutter questions. I know what's happening next. Okay.
So you mean we have to save up some questions?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, the poor guy.
Don't save Flutter questions for my talk because it's kind of different.
Fair enough. You're introducing.
Okay, so are we done with questions or are we just getting started?
I think it was the record, by the way, of the weekend of questions.
It was.
I know Flutter was gonna like unleash, question frenzy.
So either Flutter is so interesting or Patrice's talk was so intriguing that people, they really got him going. I think it's probably a match. It's both.
I think we can applaud him. He literally had nothing. He just did.